Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I found myself in the Amazon rainforest, roughly 130 kilometers outside of the city of Manaus. And very soon I will start cycling a remote stretch of Brazilian Highway 319, one of the most abandoned highways in all of South America. But before I dive deep into the wilderness, I would like to make a little video that I was looking forward to make for a long time. You see, over the last few months, so many of you had asked me in the comments section and in private messages to speak a little bit about practical matters regarding these journeys, to speak about camping in the rainforest, about my gear, or about dangers of the Amazon rainforest. So I guess eventually the time has come for me to give people what they want, or at least give some people what they want. So let's do this. So I went on this little jungle hike, and it is 5 p.m. already. So in about 1 hour and a half, it will be dark already. You know, it gets dark really quickly in tropics. So I need to set up my camp really fast. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's another beautiful morning in Brazilian Amazon, and last night I went out to look for some wildlife, but roughly 20 minutes after I left it started to rain, so I had to run back to my camp, and it was just raining, it was just pouring all night long. If you want to set up your camp in the rainforest, location matters a lot, and I mean a lot. And when I'm looking for some spot to set up my camp, I'm always looking for some higher ground, some higher place. Let's say last evening I knew that there is some little river roughly 200 meters down there, but I strategically chose this place further from the river because that area is really swampy, and if it rains, which exactly what happened last night, it might get flooded, and you really want to avoid that at any cost. Now, each and every time when I'm camping in the Amazon rainforest or any tropical or subtropical part of the world, I have this little morning ritual of mine. I check my shoes and all of the clothing that was hanging outside throughout the night. Because believe it or not, but all kinds of little animalitos, they're really looking forward to find some safe refuge in your stuff. Let's say in your shoes. Those could be cockroaches, those could be crickets, but they as well might be scorpions, spiders, and even small snakes. So I think it's really important security measure every morning. Now, finding water in the rainforest is relatively easy. But I guess then again it depends on the season. And at the moment I find myself in the middle of the rainy season, and it rains every single day, so water is just everywhere. But when I started this journey it was still peak dry season, and jungle was surprisingly dry. In fact, probably drier than ever before, because global climate change is hitting Amazon really hard. But I guess that's another topic. So there are several ways of cleaning up your water. of making it drinkable. I know that some people are using all kinds of pills and drops to purify their water. You can also boil it, but it takes a lot of time and effort. And I kept on practicing this for many years throughout my hikes. But you know, the taste of that boiled water is almost always a little bit funky. And yeah, it takes a lot of work. So my personal favorite way of purifying water is using all kinds of water filters. And this is the old filter that I was using throughout this journey so far. But now it's stuck with all kinds of shit, and I guess we will need to say goodbye to this one. And this is my new filter that I just got in Manaus. And I'm real excited to put this thing in action. In rural parts of Latin America, it's pretty common to see people drinking water straight from the rivers and lakes. And frankly, throughout my journeys, I understood that just having running water in your house is nothing but a first world privilege. And listen, in emergency situation, in last case scenario, I would drink water from anywhere. And in fact, I drank quite a lot of unpurified water throughout this trip. Simply because I got offered by some people, so I drank it without knowing. Let's say this fisherman that I met not too far from the town of Labria. I met him and I was really thirsty, and I asked him for some water. And he gave me an entire bucket of crystal clear water, and I drank a lot of it. I was so thirsty. And then when I asked him where did he took this water from, he pointed at lake and he said, "It's really good, it's a good quality water." So yeah, these things, they do happen from time to time. And I'm pretty sure I have a reasonable colony of parasites living in my guts. But when I can, I always try to get my water clean and drinkable, you know. There is absolutely no point in taking these unnecessary risks, you know. I guess all of you have noticed that I'm always carrying this big machete with me. And some friends of mine even suggested that I'm carrying big blades just because it looks cool, you know, it's just for the looks. And I ain't gonna lie, it feels really cool to walk around jungle with big machete. But if taking things seriously, machete is a fundamental tool while moving through the jungle. Unless you stick to the touristic jungle trails made for gringos, there is no way you can move through the rainforest without it. Jungle is just too dense, there are way too many vines, you will trip over, you will fall, and then most of the bushes and trees are covered with all kinds of thorns and spikes. So I simply don't see myself moving through the rainforest without it. These are the fundamentals, you know. And then sometimes you may feel frustrated. You might feel how existential crisis is hitting you real hard, and life may seem to be pointless, and there are dark thoughts creeping through your mind. What is the purpose of this shit? Where my life is going? But then you stop, and you eat a chocolate cookie. And chocolate may increase your dopamine flow by 150%, and you feel a whole lot better. God damn, I feel a whole lot better. So I hiked a little bit, and now I'm about to set up yet another camp. And you know, this time I wasn't planning to hike too deep into the jungle. And also I have a feeling that it might rain pretty soon. Because in the rainy season, if it is not raining in morning hours, most likely you will get some heavy rainfall in the afternoon, and vice versa. And then when the sun goes down, I may go and look for some wildlife. Well, unless it will rain, then I won't go. All those of you who are watching my channel for a while now, you all probably have noticed that I'm carrying both tent and a hammock. However, when I'm camping in the jungle, I always stick to the hammock. And I do believe that it has several advantages over the tent. First of all, rainforest is extremely lush and humid environment. Perhaps not so much in the dry season, but still. So forest floor gets extremely mushy and dumpy. Now the second advantage is kind of obvious. It has a better ventilation, better airflow, and it's much better way to fight this tropical humidity. And as you can see, being soaking wet is a normal state of being down here in the tropics, in the rainforest. But at least when you're sleeping, you really want to get a little bit drier, you know? Also, a hammock is much lighter to carry around. It takes much less space in your backpack, and it's so much easier to set up your camp this way. All you need to find is just 2 trees with the gap big enough to hang your stuff in between, and then you need to clear up the forest floor, you know, all the bushes, and that's that. So easy. And I guess it's kind of obvious that having some kind of a waterproof tarp above your hammock is an absolute must. Especially in the rainy season, because it really rains every once in a while. And sometimes it rains all day, and sometimes it rains all night, so you can't do without this. You just can't, really. And even though we find ourselves deep in the tropics, I'm still using my sleeping bag almost every night. Because believe it or not, but in the early morning hours in the Amazon rainforest, it might get a little bit chilly. So this makes things a little bit more comfortable. And don't forget that I was born and raised in freaking Lithuania, you know. It gets really cold down there, so I'm used to freezing, you know, for a bigger part of the year. And still it gets a little bit chilly for me, so yeah. Having a sleeping bag makes a lot of sense. And now I guess I should talk a little bit about fire. And you know, it was really easy to get fire going in the dry season, and it got really complicated in the wet season. And thus far throughout this journey, I kept on asking local people what should I use as a fire starter, what would be the best material. But so far I haven't received any straightforward clear answers, so I just try to be creative with it. So for fire starter I usually use dry palm tree leaves, little branches, you know. I try to be playful and creative. I make this little bundle and then I set it on fire. And it usually works, unless it's like really wet, like really crazy wet. And these days humidity is really crazy high. But you know, everything is possible. You just need to think a little bit and put some effort into it, you know. Come on baby, light my fire. Come on baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire. And by the way, when you're trying to set up a big fire in the rainforest, it might get a little bit tricky, because sometimes it gets difficult to find a lot of plant material to burn. You just don't see too many branches or logs laying around, at least if compared with the forests that you can find, let's say, back in good old Europe. And this happens simply because in tropical climate, in the rainforest, each and every biological process, it seems to be accelerated. So every material that falls to the ground gets broken down and absorbed really quickly. Spending nights in a hammock in the jungle is truly experience like no other. You're just laying in this little cocoon of yours, somewhat isolated from insects and other creatures of the rainforest, and somewhat protected from potential rainfall. And you're just listening to this great symphony of nature, perhaps the best of its kind on the planet Earth, you know? So it's magical. Each and every night in the rainforest is just magical. Good night, my friends. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm back in the house of Senora Sonia. And this time I haven't found that much stuff in the jungle. But you know, there are those good nights and there are those nights that aren't that good. But anyway, so some of you had asked me to show what I'm carrying with me, what kind of gear do I have throughout these journeys. So now I would like to do a little run through my bikepacking gear. And I think first I should say that even though I'm hoboing, I'm traveling for many years, when it's down to bikepacking, I'm still pretty new, I'm still pretty green. I am definitely not a pro, and all of my setup is pretty random and basic. But still, let's do this. So the bicycle I'm using is Giant Tough Road SLR. It is a touring bicycle already made for long bikepacking journeys, so I made no custom adjustments of my own. Now I got this one simply because if compared with other touring bikes, it was pretty cheap. And also they say that it's pretty tough and durable. Whether it was a good choice, I don't know, since I never had another touring bike, so I can't compare. And it really served me well for quite some time. But then I went on to cross the northern Paraguayan Chaco region. And it got completely broken. Well, frankly, not just bicycle got broken. I managed to break myself throughout that journey quite a bit as well. Now, if somebody would ask me which was the weak point of this bike or which part gave me the most trouble, I could firmly answer, those were the racks where I'm placing my panniers and my bags. Because when they break, it's next to impossible to replace them. Well, at least in this part of the world where I find myself at the moment. However, before I started this journey across South America, I decided to do a little ride in northern Argentina, across Misiones province. I was crossing Iguazu National Park, and on some slippery jungle road I managed to crash my bicycle and I broke the front rack. And ever since then I'm bikepacking just with the back rack. And even that one got broken several times when I was cycling down the Trans-Amazonian highway. But all of you who are watching my channel for a while now, well, probably you all remember my little dramas with bicycle rack. And frankly, I don't want to even talk about this subject, you know? It just hurts, you know? It hurts. It does. Now, the rest of my bicycle gear is very basic. And to be frank, I really don't know that much about bikes and I keep on bikepacking just because I like it. You know, I just feel like cycling and that's that. I don't have a speedometer, I'm not measuring the distance or average speed, all those things, they really don't matter to me at all. Yet, that being said, I was born and raised on the eastern side of Europe. So, I'm sort of capable of fixing certain things, you know, it's in my nature. And I do have some basic equipment. First of all, I always carry a bunch of tubes and some patches and some glue, just in case if my tire gets punctured, and that happens quite often. And that was particularly a big issue back in Gran Chaco region, because bushes down there, they all just covered with all kinds of thorns and spikes. In the Amazon, not so much, but still, it happens every once in a while. I also have my multi-tool and a bunch of other stuff, just for the quick repair, you know. And I'm always carrying a spare tire. And if you're going for some long bikepacking journey, my friend, so should you. Because throughout these journeys, I already managed to explode my tire thrice. And 2 times it happens in relatively remote locations. So just in case, you should always be ready. Now, in this journey across South America, I'm mainly sleeping in my hammock. And my original idea was to travel just with hammock, you know, just to keep things really light. I must also admit that over the years I got a little bit tired of sleeping in the tent. You see, I have calculated that if put all together, I've spent nearly 3.5 years living in the tent. And that's roughly 10% of my entire life so far. And once in Argentina, I slept in a tent for 8 months straight. So I guess I was just looking for some kind of a change, you know. But right before I started this journey, on the very last moment, back in the city of João Pessoa, I still decided to get myself some sort of a cheap-ass tent. And that was the right decision. Because during the first chapter of this journey, I was crossing this interesting ecological region, endemic to Brazil, called Caatinga. And there weren't too many trees to hang my hammock around. And even once I entered Amazonian region, deforestation along Trans-Amazonian Highway was so brutal that sometimes it was really difficult to find any trees. So having a tent was really handy, and it still is sometimes. Then I have a waterproof tarp for my hammock. That's very important, especially in the rainy season. And I have two backpacks. The bigger one that I use for long hikes, and the smaller one which I use just, to take a walk somewhere. I also have this backpack cover, which is an absolute must, especially in the tropics, because it rains so much. And I always carry my machete. And I have them tools to keep my machete sharp too. That's important. And I always have my snake hook, which is pretty big and, to be frank, sometimes a little bit uncomfortable to carry on my bike, but in certain moments it's essential, it's just fundamental for me to have it. And I always carry some rope and a bunch of these things. And you can fix almost everything with these, unless it's broken relationship. My camera is Canon EOS 7 Mark II, and I use it both for taking pictures and making these videos. I have three lenses. The regular one, the big one, which I use for wildlife photography, and another one for macro photography, but frankly I was barely using it on this trip so far. And obviously I have my laptop, a bunch of chargers, a bunch of cables, several external drives, a little power bank, all of these things. So in general I carry a lot of fancy electronics, so I have plenty of reasons to be worried when I'm crossing some marginal areas in Latin America. Now I always have some fundamentals for basic personal hygiene. And even though living on the road might get rough and dirty, I believe that any hobo should aspire to be as clean as possible, regardless of the circumstances. I also got some stuff for cooking, which is really humble. Let's say I have this pot, which was used so much that I think I really should get a new one. But yeah, every pot tells a story, yeah? And I always carry my little first aid kit or first aid bag with all of the fundamentals inside, from paracetamol to some pills to treat diarrhea and so on and so on. And by the way, I'm always carrying a lot of alcohol to clean my hands, because you see, from time to time I'm handling a lot of little animalitos, and it's very important to sanitize your hands afterwards. But well, I think it's very important to clean your hands from time to time, regardless whether you're touching some animalitos or not. And sometimes down the road it gets complicated, so yeah, I'm carrying a lot of alcohol for that. So I really hope that you enjoyed this little video of mine, because for the first time I tried to give a little insight into the practical matters regarding these journeys. And no worries, in my next video I will switch back to the regular content. But for now, I really want to get some rest. So good night, my friends. I'll see you soon.